Hey guys, so I'm sort of making this video as a response to the Alabama new abortion law where essentially you can't really get an abortion anymore. And even if doctors perform illegal abortion, apparently they can go to jail for longer than a rapist that caused a woman to be pregnant who would have needed that abortion. So that's pretty messed up. And the main thing I really wanted to address was the argument that I made a while ago on Twitter yesterday, where I was talking about how a study actually showed, and I'm sure it's not just this study, there's probably other examples out there, but I did link that one study, so feel free to go check it out. It said that if you make abortion illegal, it doesn't actually stop the overall number of abortions, but rather it increases the proportion and the overall number of unsafe abortions. That is kind of scary because it kind of shows how women will do whatever it takes, in order to get that abortion. If this baby is definitely going to negatively impact their life, either they can't actually support the baby or they're too young to actually, raise a child. These unsafe abortions are really dangerous. Normally, if you perform abortions in a proper medical setting, it would be perfectly safe. There's pretty much no failure rate. You're not going to increase your chances of, you're not going to decrease your chances of getting a baby in the future. You're not going to increase your chances of cancer. You're not going to really harm your uterus or your reproductive organs in any way. That may not have been the case in the past, but today medical advancement has made abortions really, really safe. So that's good news. Unsafe abortions, however, are done in a really horrible manner. I mean, think about it. There's a few ways to do it, obviously. There's ways such as repeatedly punching your stomach, causing trauma so that you can dislocate the cells from the walls of your uterus. That is a thing that a lot of women do, and it has been done many, many times in the past just to induce a miscarriage. And then obviously if you induce a miscarriage, you're not going to have the baby anymore. Then there's other methods such as drinking poison, intoxicating yourself. And that's sort of also very scary as well, especially if the woman is drinking certain types of poison, which she doesn't actually understand the full effects of. And you see there's 70,000 women in the world right now per year. I think it's in the world or it's in the United States that die due to unsafe abortions, ones that she is causing to herself. And there's another 5 million of these women who are permanently injured from these methods. Women are going to do it anyway, and it turns out that in the United States, when a state passes a law that bans abortion, what happens is that women will do one of two things. Either they will move out to nearby states where abortion is legal and they will get it done there, or they will just cause a miscarriage themselves. And there's very horrifying ways that you can cause a miscarriage, and especially women who don't have any medical knowledge on what toxins are safe to consume and whatnot, or are just enough to kill the baby, or the proper way to actually cause these abortions, they can really harm themselves. And especially, I mean, we definitely don't want women to go down that path. Overall amount of abortions don't actually decrease. It's the number of unsafe abortions that increase, and the number of legal and safe abortions performed in medical settings that decrease. So if women are going to get it anyway, my proposal is that why not just give them a safe way to do so? Of course, saying that banning something doesn't stop people from doing it can't be applied to everything. I've seen some pro-lifers on Twitter say you can't make that argument that that banning abortion doesn't decrease the number of overall abortions, because by that sense, why don't we just make murder legal, because it doesn't decrease the number of murders? Well, the thing about that is that you have to consider each of these situations individually. You can't just say banning anything would cause it to decrease in numbers or not decrease in numbers. You have to look at each individual situation differently. Abortions, on one hand, one difference I could already think of is that for abortions, women have very large incentives to get them. The baby's going to ruin their lives, or they're not physically prepared to raise a child. Something like murder doesn't have that same sort of incentive for people to want to do it. And it is also partly, blocked by our own sense of, morality that has been passed down through evolution. But essentially, these two things are very different. And when you consider everything, like, for example, if you consider drug use, if you consider things like, firearms or something like that, you have to consider each of these differently when it comes to banning or not banning them, because banning them is going to have a different effect depending on what the actual thing is you are banning. In this case, abortion has been clearly shown that you don't decrease the overall number of abortions if you ban abortions. And that is highlighted by the study that I've linked in my previous tweet if you actually want to go and check it out. So regardless of that argument, the study clearly shows, and it compared countries in which in which abortion is illegal, and countries in which it's not illegal. And it sort of drew a conclusion from that. It actually has multiple sets of data that you can actually go and look at, and it's actually a fairly interesting read. So I do recommend reading it. If you don't want to read through the whole thing, just go to the abstract. The abstract usually summarizes the entire paper. That's sort of how science works. But anyway, so this is one of the most powerful arguments I would really say when it comes to siding with pro-choice, simply because a lot of pro-lifers, when they argue against abortions, they would say something like, "Oh, the fetus is a baby," or like it has the potential to become a human being, therefore it deserves rights, and the baby's rights to live should outweigh whatever rights the mother has to her own body. Fine, even if we give you that. Banning abortions is not the way to solve your problem, because as the study has shown, it doesn't decrease the number of overall abortions. So if you want to find a way to get these children or these fetuses to live until parturition, you better think of a different way for that to happen. And I can already think of many, many proper solutions. For example, introducing good contraceptions, giving better sex education, so that these people are more informed about how to not get pregnant. Using contraceptives properly, for example, is a great way to educate the public so that you actually get less abortions, because there's going to be less unwanted pregnancies. Anyway, this is just sort of a rant in response to what I heard. I didn't even hear about this news until just yesterday, and it kind of infuriates me. And I know I don't talk about politics a lot, and especially on my channel, I try to avoid politics at all, even though I made like 1 or 2 abortion videos like 2 years ago or something. I do try to stay away from that, simply because politics can be pretty polarizing, and I'm sure many of you guys who watch me are probably pro-life. I'm just but then, Twitter's is a separate thing. So whatever, I can post whatever I want on Twitter. So that's sort of why I wanted to do this. Probably not going to talk too much more about this, since it's kind of like everyone's talking about it right now, but I'm already getting tired of talking about it. Essentially, my stance is, women should have the right to an abortion. I do think that, for example, a lot of pro-life arguments on the baby not, should having rights over the mother or whatnot, the right to live and stuff like that. I do have problems with those arguments too, but this, I think the one I just presented about banning abortions, not actually reducing the number of abortions, is sort of the highest in this hierarchy in terms of arguments, because it sort of makes all the other those pro-life arguments it renders them kind of irrelevant. So I sort of like this argument. Feel free to use the source that I provided in my previous tweet if you want to reference something like an actual study. But other than that, I'll see you later.